Okay, God bless you. This is Pastor Joel Martinez, and thank you for joining us today. It is my honor and privilege, and it's also a blessing to have you connected and all those supporters in our channel. We thank you. Um, I want to actually take a little time to introduce myself a little bit. I know I haven't really done that much. So, as I stated, my name is Pastor Joel Martinez. I am pastor here in Freedom Worship in the Bronx, New York. We've been pastoring here for the last 2 years. Yes, I've been ordained since 2015, but I didn't officially start pastoring and founding this church, Freedom Worship, since 2021. It's been a blessing. There's been ups and downs. There's been so many good and bad moments, but it's part of the process. But overall, it's a privilege and honor to serve the people of God, right? Besides that, I am 35 years old as of the recording of here, 2023. 35 years old. I wish I was 25, no, but I'm 35. I was born here in New York City from migrant parents who migrated from Honduras. What can I say? It's been a journey growing up. I come from a home of five brothers and a single mom who eventually got married, my stepfather. But it's just been a great journey, to say the least. But that's pretty much all I have to say. Here I am in New York City doing what I got to do. Since I was ordained in 2015, I had met a lot of young people all over the city, all over the country, frankly. And I have been able to see God's hands in such a powerful way. But I must add also that I was already working in ministry before I was ordained in 2015. God called me to ministry officially in 2012. That's when I developed the whole vision of freedom. Freedom actually was a movement composed of a lot of young people. We started off at the church where I served at the time, and I just saw a need. I saw a need to minister to young people. I was in a church that was very dynamic in worship. The pastor was really good at what he did, preaching and teaching. But I also saw that the young people at the time weren't really as involved in the church. So I feel like that's what God kind of like put in me, that need to have to work with young people at the time. I remember one night I was sitting with some friends of mine who I get along with still today. And we were at the dining room table. And I remember we were just talking about, let's just do something. Let's do something. Let's start something that's going to be productive, that's going to help a lot of churches. And we came up with the idea of establishing a company that would kind of render services for like multimedia and graphic designs, audio, or just to cater to any events, right? And one of my friends, Onan, his name, Onan, he's really good with audio and he does a lot of like music stuff. So he figured that he could offer the services of, like kind of like rendering those music services and even the audio that would edit and it's that stuff for audio. I'm not really good at that stuff. He would know all the lingo, but his mindset was more focused on the audio engineering and providing the music services, connecting musicians and stuff like that in events. And I was kind of more focused on the video production, photography, and even providing like the flyers and things of that nature. So this is something that God has put in me. So I remember as we were sitting there having this conversation, I remember this conversation, it was just flowing. It was just flowing, right? And ultimately, that night, something birthed in me. And I remember even after the meeting was done, I sat at the table and I began to just write ideas that I had. And although we were speaking about rendering services at events and things of that nature, my heart was really just like, God, what can I do for the youth? What is it I could do for the young people, right? Because there's just so much need out there and there's just so much to do. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe I should start off with doing an event. And I remember clearly that night that started just structuring a plan together and putting an event together. And I remember going to my friend at the time, Margaret, and I told her, listen, I have an idea. Why won't we just do an event? It's gonna call Freedom Explosion, right? Freedom Youth Explosion. And I got everything. She's very like organized, and she's always thinking about all the details, the finances, and everything. And I'm more like just a visionary. I just kind of look at the bigger goal and the bigger picture. But then I didn't really like, I'm not a great thinker, or wasn't a great thinker at that time when I first started, of like the smaller details, how we're gonna maneuver through here, maneuver through there, and the finances, the budgets, and this and that. And this is something that she was like, okay, I love what I'm hearing, but how are we gonna pay for this? How are we gonna pay for that? And I remember I had everything kind of like just written down already, and I just turned a piece of paper and I was like, look, and she was just like, wow, right? And this is where everything was just kind of like born at that time. I remember I was just so passionate, but I was also scared because it was the very first event I was gonna do. I didn't know how the turnout was going to be. I had no idea, no clue how this works. I wasn't really entirely affiliated to a church where I could say that I would have received the full support of anyone. But I do remember a pastor, a female pastor at the time. She said, no, you could have it here. You could do the event here, which was like the first door that opened. And she told me, whatever you need, I'll be here. I'll be here. And as I started making the phone calls and reaching out to the speakers and to the worshipers of that night and ushers and just putting everything together and looking at the logistics of flying people out, as we started reaching to the event, I remember gathering with closer friends and people that were like, affiliated with me. We would pray, literally just pray, just present things to God. And it was just young people. And I'm talking about literally teenagers. I think I was 24, 25 at the time, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just scared out of my mind because I'm over here like, God, I know you're going to do what you put in my heart. I know you're going to make it happen. But at the same time, I know that you had entrusted in me the knowledge and all the details, the logistics, and this and that and the third. Mind you, this is my first time ever doing an event. So as we got closer to the event, we're like a week out, and I'm panicking, I'm freaking out. But everybody was already confirmed. The singers confirmed, the preacher for that night confirmed. Everything was just kind of like set up in that sense. But I really didn't hear enough hype per se. Like I didn't see a lot of people posting it on Facebook as like I was doing it. I didn't see people sharing. I didn't hear that vibe. So to me, it was just kind of like, okay, I got everything set up for the event, but it was just like crickets. Like I didn't, I didn't feel the vibe. I didn't feel like, okay, a movement is happening. People are talking about it. They're sharing it, and I'm panic mode because I'm like, okay, I have everything set up. I got to figure out how to pay these people, or at least get them to come and this and that and the third. But I have no idea if we're gonna have people show up. And I remember that Saturday, where it's about 4:30, and the event was supposed to start at 6. I remember, and we were kind of set up. The musicians were already set up. The worshiper was set up. Everything was set up. I I was on my social media, and I didn't see anybody either posting about it or telling me, hey, asking me for an address. I'll be honest, I was just in contact with the people that were supposed to perform that night or minister that night. And I remember already being about 5:30, and I said, God, I think I jumped on this too soon. This is going to be a failure. This is not going to work. And what am I doing? This is just, just, I'm just crazy for doing this. I thought to myself. And I remember literally, I think 10 minutes to 6 or so, I just started seeing a parade of people walking in. I'm talking about, like, what? It just young people coming in, pastors with the youth were coming in. The local church showed up. I just started seeing like people I never seen in my life before. And I'm talking about a space that could hold about, like, I could say maybe about 200 people. I remember literally in a matter of like maybe a half an hour, just filled up. I'm talking about every single chair. I remember that night. It was just so crazy to me because I'm like, oh wow, God really doesn't fail. Like whatever He said He's gonna do, whatever He put in your heart, He's gonna back it up. And I remember that the space was it was just so full that there was people literally standing in the overflow. And I remember looking in the back door, people were opening the doors to see how they could get in. And I literally remember like people opening the door and like, man, like, and they just turned back around and left because they couldn't come in. It was just such an experience. And that was just the beginning of something that I knew God was doing here in New York. And His promise has been just real. And since then, since that event, I decided to do follow-ups with people that reconciled the night. I forgot honestly how many people reconciled that night and gave their life to Christ that night, but it was a big number. And I said, well, what do I do now? The event is done, everything has been paid for, everybody's gone. So what do I do now? And that's when I developed a team. I started reaching out to the people that are already working with me. And obviously after the event, more people kind of added into the group. And we would just kind of do this follow-up, and then we started meeting weekly at someone's home, and we would just do that. And I would literally see how some young people's life was transformed. It was changed. They went from being kind of like cold in the church to like, more energetic, more involved. It was just a hype thing, 2013. And from literally 2 weeks after the first Freedom Youth explosion, we started planning for 2014, right? And March 2014, because the first one was March 2013. The second one was going to be in March 2014. And we began to literally plan and pray. We started adding people to the movement. It's just something beautiful, something beautiful. And that was what I would say the birth of what God was beginning to do. But even though I understood the assignment, and even though I knew what He was doing, and I knew exactly what was my purpose here on earth, there was still some things in me that I had to work with. There was some things in me that God had to kind of like deliver me from, and that's pretty much what I kind of wanted to like talk about today, because everything that I was doing in 2012, and I started writing things out, and what God had put in my heart, the vision of like setting captives free and dealing with young people and just developing worshipers so they could be free. This is why the name of this ministry is called Freedom Worship. Originally, it was called Freedom House of Worship, and then God spoke to me in 2021 when we established the church to change the name for a particular reason. I'll get to that in another video. But that freedom movement, which is where we first started, was about deliverance. And mind you, I was not a deliverance type of preacher. I was never a deliverance type of preacher. I never really believed in deliverance, to be honest with you. I was never a real big fan of casting out demons and and just never. I always just looked at a contemporary type of movement with worship and just community type of setting. But I had no idea that from the day God called me to this ministry, that He was putting in me a deliverance ministry. But it was just a method that was just completely different, because the way God was dealing with this ministry was always through worship. I mean, from the very first event that we did, the worship was just unbelievable. But even through worship, I remember as Minister Michael Williams was worshiping that night, I could look out through the crowd, and I would see young people literally just crying on their knees, and the same thing happened in the second year after that, and the year after that, right? I remember that just through just worship, right? I could literally spiritually see the bondage and being broken, and chains being broken, and I could literally see how God is working in some things through other people, but I was still in bondage. It's crazy how I'm the visionary of this whole movement, and I see how God is manifesting Himself and just delivering other people through worship and everything that He's doing. But I remember that night. I remember after this first night, I went home. And I was just, for some reason, I was emotional. I was grateful. I was happy. But at the same time, I was emotional, because I just felt like I was going through a lot in my life at that moment. And I'm just like trying to figure out what is really going on. What is really, really going on? And I remember God speaking to me clearly, especially going into the second event, when He told me the issue is that you carry a lot of things from your childhood that you haven't let go. And I'm not talking about forgiveness. I'm talking about hurt. I'm talking about resentment, right? And also, there's things that we carry ourselves through generations that require deliverance, literally deliverance. And as I'm understanding that, and so I'm seeing that, and I'm hearing God speak to me, I then started to understand with more clarity and more understanding why I was called to do what I do. And I could freely say today, I'll be honest with you, I could clearly say this today, that it is hard, nearly kind of just hard to be used in deliverance when you don't allow yourself to be delivered, and you don't believe that deliverance is something you could need in your life, and I encourage you today, whatever it is you went through in your past, whatever struggles you are struggling with, listen, you have to go to God about it. Go to God about it. You know what I mean? And understand that deliverance is no hokey pokey spooky thing. There's nothing to actually be scared about. You don't need to be scared when it comes to deliverance. Deliverance is the children's bread. It is the children's bread. According to Matthew chapter 15, when the Canaanite woman came to Jesus, she came to Jesus because she was desperate. And lately I've been following this amazing man of God, Alexander Pagani. He's actually here in the Bronx as well, where we at too. And I'm gonna be honest, I was not a fan of him before. I was like, what the hell is this? Because I never really believed in deliverance. But I remember one time, and this kind of makes me a little emotional. I remember listening to his testimony, and he speaks about the one day that he was in a meeting with his leaders, and that he got angry about something. They said no about something, and he just got upset, and then he just lashed out. And then there was something in him that were manifesting, some demons in him, or a demon in him that was manifesting. And he recalls that meeting where he says that he felt a foot on his back, and that he heard a voice that said that let him manifest because he's gonna leave today. And that just kind of when I heard that, I said, wow. because it's possible to be a pastor and need deliverance. It's possible to be a minister and you need deliverance. It's possible to be worshiping at a church with your talent and your great voice and vocal cords and still need deliverance, right? And this is something that kind of like hit home to me because I'm like, God, how is it possible that I could be preaching and traveling and going here and just leading people but go home and feel empty. Go home and feel like I don't want to speak to anybody, feel angry about things. Because there was things in me that was still manifesting. There was things in me that still had a break. There was things about me that I needed to let go, right? But there's just some things that is more than just letting go. It's just some things that you need to be delivered from, right? And deliverance isn't a bad thing. We just all need to go to God. Go to God and put a complete faith in Him. Put a complete faith in Him. And as I was stating, I'm gonna wrap up with this: that deliverance is your bread. It's your daily bread. You know, we need this every single day, and we all need deliverance for something. And this is why you shouldn't take it upon yourself to judge your brother on the sins that he has, because there's something you're kind of limping on yourself. We all need deliverance in some area in our life, and as a body of Christ, as a people of God, it is our job to pray for one another, lift one another, cover one another. But I do agree that if somebody's actively living a life of sin with no remorse, right, with no repentance, as a brother, we should execute that authority to call him out on this nonsense, but with love. And that's the thing. Do it with love, right? But after that, it is not with the idea to feel like I should be better or I am better than this person because this person is a liar or that person is an adulterer. Well, you over here judging a liar and an adulterer, but you a thief. So let that go. Let that go. Pray for one another and look at yourself. Look at yourself and understand that there is something in you that you may have to let go and be delivered from. Now, if you believe you got nothing to be delivered from, if you're so sure that you're like the most obedient Christian on the face of the earth, then you should be fasting. You should be praying for everybody else and make sure that they're okay until Christ comes, because you're good, right? But if you know there's some things you got to work on yourself, then maybe you shouldn't be the person pointing out somebody else's sin and judging somebody else. Focus on yourself. But we all need deliverance. And you who is listening to me, who may have been ministered by this one way or another, I'm going to tell you straight up, don't waste your time trying to impress other people. Don't waste your time trying to pretend, better yet said, that you got it all together. It's not going to work. Best thing you could do is humble yourself. This is something I had to learn the hard way. Humble yourself. Completely humble yourself. And allow God to work in those areas in your life. Allow Him to work in those areas in life. Let Him take that time to break you, to mold you, to just operate in your life. That surgery that's needed, right? Because when God is done dealing with you in that particular area of your life, you're going to be stronger. You're going to be better. You're going to be healthier. And you're going to be a more effective Christian. But don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed to accept the fact that you need to be delivered for something, that you need to be healed for something, that you need to be broken at something. Because that's what God does. He breaks. In order for him to use you, he needs to break you. In order for him to use you, he needs to just rearrange some things in your life. And this is the problem. When God is getting ready to call you, when God is getting ready to lift you up to a different level in your life, some people just gonna have to leave your life. Some situations are gonna have to change. Some jobs can't go with you to your destiny. So this is to understand that as much as we thank God for the doors that He opened, let us praise Him and thank Him for the doors He closed. And that's just how it is. All right. So thank you for taking your time and listening to me today. I wanted to just connect with some of you. And as always, those who have been following, listen, I have a relationship with some of you who's been following me on social media for many, many years now, even since I started. Listen, you know who you are. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you for your prayers. I know there's been times where even you had thought, or other people may have told you that I wasn't going to make it till now. Well, thank God. And I owe it all to Him. I'm still here. And we have a lot of work to do. And if you are in the New York area or wherever you follow from, listen, I would like to personally invite you to get ready. I'm going to announce the dates. We're going to have our Freedom Conference again this year coming up in 2024 in March, as usual, right? And don't miss out. Don't miss out on it. There's going to be, as usual, God is going to do what He got to do, right? So stay connected with us. Don't be afraid to reach out, right? And we'll be there. Right? So God bless you. Joel Martinez. Until the next time. God bless. Bye-bye.